Good morning, how are we doing? I hope you're good. So in today's show we're going to talk about learning to become uncomfortable. I think it's beneficial because life is full of uncomforts, and being able to face those uncomforts I think is going to help us progress and help us become the guy that we want to be, right? And instead of running away from being uncomfortable, we can face it head on to turn being uncomfortable into comfortable. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Rise to Thrive show. I am your host, James Borman. And if you are coming through, please do let me know. So this is the last show that I'll be able to announce that on Monday we'll be starting our Elite 7 3-day course. So if you're looking to work on your mind, strengthen your inner self, your character, lead yourself to lead other people around you, then this will be a game changer for you. It's absolutely free. There is no cost. It's 7 days in our Elite Brotherhood. The details are on the link somewhere here. Go and check them out. All right, so the first time I really faced being very uncomfortable in life is when I joined the military. Even from day one, I remember arriving at the CTC Limpston train station with my bag on, shaved head, young 22, 23-year-old, with the drill instructor like leading us off to this huge block. So this room is huge, right? It held like 70 beds, and it was called the foundation block, and it's where you stayed for the first 2 weeks of your military career. And it was to teach us all the basics, get us all to a specific standard before then we moved out into accommodation blocks and followed the training program. And I remember getting in there and feeling so fearful, so overwhelmed, and so full of anxiety that I took myself to the toilets and just had a little cry, because I felt like I had the shock of capture, right? Oops, the shock of capture. And I felt very uncomfortable in that environment because it wasn't familiar to me, right? And I really struggled in the first for like 4 to 5 weeks of military training because I felt very out of my depth, very uncomfortable, because it's not the environment that I was used to. I was away from home, and it was very, very difficult to deal with and kind of get my head around. And then throughout my military career, we'd always be put into those situations, right? When we went to Afghanistan, that was another situation of being in an uncomfortable position. And I think all of the training that we did in the military was to learn how to become comfortable in an uncomfortable environment or situation, so that we were well trained, well drilled, to be able to show up despite there being adversity and hardship in front of us. And I think I come across a lot of guys in this journey of being in the man coach, where a lot of guys will shy away from facing uncomfortable, difficult positions that happen in life. They are things like decisions in relationships, decisions in jobs, decisions in health, pushing themselves out of their comfort zones, okay, and into a place where actually they're challenging themselves. Because I don't really personally believe that you can ever grow or develop if you're not constantly putting yourself in an uncomfortable position, because you just stay the same, because you're too afraid to break out of that shell, that bubble, to then move on to the next thing that's going to develop you and improve you within life, right? I even did it for the man coach. He wasn't a man coach back then, but when I started this online project way back in 2015, it was just James Borman Fitness and Lifestyle back then. But I stalled that for 1.5 years because I was uncomfortable filming. I was uncomfortable being in front of camera. So instead of breaking through and overcoming that, I just feared it and didn't do it and avoided it. So I just stayed the same. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So the 3 fears that I think, or the three emotions that I think a lot of people face when they're in an uncomfortable position is anxiety, overwhelm, and fear. And it's like the fear of the unknown, is the anxiety of the unknown, and it's the overwhelm of, my God, what if I crash and burn? And all of those three emotions combined together, or even just one of them is enough, but three together is nuclear. We suddenly doubt ourselves. We suddenly start sweating the development, that we start sweating being in an environment where we feel we're out of our league, or we're just not comfortable, or we're just not used to. So for many people, for example, so this weekend we're going to Penny Fan in Brecon Beacons, and I'm meeting up with some of my small group coaching program men, and for some of them it will be a nerve-wracking experience to leave home and go there. For me, even myself right now, I feel fairly anxious about leaving home and going to do that, but I know as soon as we're in the car and we're on the way, I'll be fine. But it's the build up to it. So it's kind of like, and the reason that I set Brecon as the place is because I wanted to get out of the town for a bit, because I think you can become complacent, and you don't actually ever do anything when you become complacent and comfortable. Okay, you end up staying the same. So it's a default mode. When life becomes tough, we settle for cozy. And I think that because we don't want to face the adversity or the stress or the emotions, we just stay in that cozy place, right, that we know that this place here is safe. Okay, it's kind of like that fight or flight place. You know, when someone's developing, they experience new emotions. It's almost like actually you're progressing and taking leaps of faith, but you're in an uncharted territory where you start to feel, oh my God, I'm starting to feel quite nervous about being here. That's how I feel about how the business has grown. Like, I never expected the business to be what it is today, but it is, and it makes me feel slightly unnervy sometimes, like almost like imposter syndrome. And sometimes I remember when we did our Rise to Thrive seminar in Aston Villa Stadium last year, we had like 120 lads in the room, and then all of a sudden I've got to go up to the front of the room and start talking, and then suddenly, like, oh my God, like all of a sudden you start feeling that overwhelm and you're out of your comfort zone. And it's the reason I did it. So through the process, we get better at it. We've got to challenge ourselves. We've got to prepare ourselves mentally, emotionally and physically to be able to overcome that as well. So how do we overcome it? How do we get over that stigma of being stuck in a place where we don't really progress in an uncomfortable position? So there's a couple of things. I'll give you one example. So the first example is, most of you see me anyway in there, but when the tide's in and it's not full of like feces, I get in the sea, like in the freezing cold. I've been in the sea when it's snowing, I've been in the sea when it's raining, I've been in the sea when it's gorgeous. And one of the things is that when you go in the sea at 5:30 in the morning, it's naturally an uncomfortable environment to be in, right? It's naturally an uncomfortable environment to be in. So I go in there anyway. And I go in there because I want to almost build my brain and my mindset to be able to show up and do something that makes me feel uncomfortable until it gets to the point where it feels comfortable and it feels normal. I do it with cold showers. So I do 90 minutes of a cold shower, even when I just don't want it. When I get in the shower, I'm just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then I put the cold shower on, and you just suck it up for an hour. And I guess it hardens the way that you think in that respect, in terms of learning to be uncomfortable. So much so now that a cold shower, or being in a sea, or running 50 miles, or running a 100-miler, it doesn't feel like I'm uncomfortable anymore. It feels pretty normal. I can just put on my trainers, start a training program, go off and do it. I can just strip down to my knicks, get in the sea, sit in there for 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean? But when I first did it, it was like, oh my God, it's a big build-up. It's a big build-up. So I think putting yourself on the line more is essentially the way forwards, right? It's one of those things that the more you do, the better you get, the more conditioning at it you get. It's like when you first start, when you're a young teenager and you start kissing girls, you're like, the build up to that first kiss, right, is like uncomfortable. You feel fearful, overwhelmed, anxious, and then you snog the first girl, and then you start going to discos and parties, and then suddenly you're kissing 30 girls in one night. You know what I mean? And it becomes normal. So the way that we make uncomfortable comfortable is by doing more of it. And you have to accept that in those early stages, there's going to be an element of courage needed, and it's not going to be nice, and it's not going to be pleasant, but you're going to get to a point where you go, man, this is normal. This is the normal. A lot of people don't register for our programs because they overthink. It makes them feel uncomfortable to put themselves on the line. Many people don't come to our seminar. We've got a seminar at the end of the month, which will change everybody who's going to be their lives and perspective for 2023. But a lot of people won't come because they're unsure about being in that environment. They're nervous about being in that environment. They don't know what to expect. So they play it safe and they don't show up. Many people want to sign up to Elite 7 next week, but they won't because they don't know what to expect and puts them in an uncomfortable position, so they won't. And many people will live the rest of their life going through that. They will never do anything because they will always fear. They will always be uncomfortable in an uncomfortable position. They will never try to find a comfort in an uncomfortable position. And you can't stick like that. Like, if I just personally, you can if you want to. But if you are ever looking to raise your game, there is going to be an element of uncomfortableness. Anyone that starts running, it's uncomfortable. Anyone who starts dating for a long time, it's uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I hope that helps, guys. Hope you have a great weekend. We've put some pics up of us up Penny Fan. Let's hope it's a nice day. Thanks for watching this week. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.